Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I drop the kids off at school and deliver an episode to you while I walk home. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, podcast listeners. It is Thursday, May 24th, and it's a lovely day. I hope that you're having a pleasant May so far. It's nearly the end of the month and the beginning of what I think of as the real summer, June, July, August. And the temperature is certainly shooting up to fit with that move. I think it's going to be in the 80s today, which is some other number for those of you who aren't in the archaic Fahrenheit scale. I don't know off the top of my head. I can't do that conversion. So, I was editing yesterday's episode and getting ready to post it ahead of schedule as I do. So yesterday's episode is going up Monday, or Friday, that's tomorrow, May 25th. And this episode is going up the 30th of May, I believe, Wednesday the 30th of May. And that's when you're probably listening. And I noticed that this is episode 50. 50, holy cow. Who'd have thought that this would get to 50 episodes? Of course, I don't get much feedback, so it could just be me talking to the wind. But a few of you have posted in the guild or sent me messages. Occasionally I hear a comment, and I really appreciate you reaching out. If you've stuck with me this long, you're at 50 episodes. Well done. Way to go, you. So I'm curious. I'd love to hear from you. What's working about the podcast? I think round numbers are a nice time to be a little introspective, so I'm keen to know, what do you think works about what we're doing here? What would you like me to change? Do you want me to talk more about my day-to-day gameplays? Do you want me to talk less about that? Do you want me to have, I don't know. Just let me know what you think's working about the show and what you think isn't. You can do that through all the various places that you can get a hold of me, either rattleboxgames.com. You can email Brendan at rattleboxgames. You can visit the show notes and post a comment there. The best place is the Boardgame Geek Guild 3269, which there's a link to it from our show notes, so you can find it there. I'd love to hear what you're thinking of the show and what you think I should do to improve it. In the meantime, also, being that it's episode 50, and this seems to be a thing people do, I thought that I would share with you my top 50 games. I'm going to read the list. No commentary. No, I'm kidding. That would be, I think, not great podcasting. So I'm going to use the model that most of the Dice Tower people have used when they've done a top 50, which is to articulate why this game makes it into their top 50. I was looking at Boardgame Geek the other day, and I have several hundred games played. But a significant portion of this list reflects the experiences I've had as a relatively recent gamer. And so some of these are sentimental favorites as much as they are strategic favorites. This list I made at the end of 2017, so anything that I've gotten in the last few months won't be on there. I update my top 50 once a year, or I will do it once a year from now on. Last time I did it was 2015, and then I did it at the end of 2017. And I think from now on, I'm just going to do that as part of my post-Christmas hanging around the house playing games time, is to evaluate my top 50 again and see where things shake out. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to try to hit 10 of these each episode. So this may take about 5 episodes, or it's possible it'll take longer if I take too long to talk, or if I encounter some other theme that I think needs addressing. You know, if there's something else comes up and I feel like there's a topic that should be addressed, I will just kind of bump this back to give it room. So today I'm going to do numbers 50 through 41. A little bit about my process for picking a top 50. One of the things I've done in the past, which I'm not sure I'm going to continue, was to only pick from games I own. Part of my argument there was a game can't be in my top 50 if I don't own it. I don't know whether that makes sense or not. As my collection acquisition stuff slows down and I spend more time at like big game events playing games that other people bring, it's pretty reasonable to think I'll play a game and it'll be amazing, and then I will think like, oh, this definitely would be in my top 50, except I didn't buy it. So I probably will revisit that at the end of this year for my end of 2018 top 50 list. But for now, a game isn't on this list unless I own it. So that's part of the caveat. All right, so number 50 through 41. Number 50, the 50th game on my top 50 list is The Resistance. The Resistance is one of the first hobby games I played. It is a really interesting engagement with the social deduction format. In fact, you could kind of say it invented the modern hobby social deduction game. I guess Werewolf did that, but Werewolf has been around a long time, and I think Ted Alsbach's version it refined it a bit, but it didn't really introduce much to the genre itself, and it didn't solve the essential problem of Mafia or Werewolf, which is player elimination. The thing I really like about The Resistance is that it did solve the question of player elimination by introducing the voting on missions business. So you vote on missions, and then you are trying to figure out who the villains are, but you never actually kick anybody out of the game. The expansions have augmented the game significantly by adding other roles that you can play, which make the game much more interesting as well. I think the Avalon theme is good, but I haven't actually played that one. I have the science fiction Resistance, and I have a couple of the expansions. I've been meaning to pick up the others, but I don't play the game that often, so it seems silly to put more money into expansions I'm not going to use. But The Resistance, that's number 50. Number 49 is Pandemic. The original co-op game is still one that I find really fun. I like playing, for lack of a better phrase, vanilla Pandemic. I don't have any of the conventional expansions for Pandemic, but I do have the Pandemic Legacy games. But the original it's a very tight co-op game that really allows for real cooperation. And that's if you take as the idea of the co-op game the notion of working together to solve a puzzle. Seth Jaffe described this on a podcast. Which one? Boy, Ludology maybe? And he talked about a game like Pandemic. He was arguing with T.C. Petty. I think it was on Ludology. And they were just talking about the idea of Pandemic being a problem that you solve together. And if you want to play that kind of game, Pandemic's the perfect version. I do like it a lot. Number 48 is as much a sentimental favorite as it is a game I really enjoy, although I do always have fun playing Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride is a game we've had for a long time. It was for a long time my wife's favorite, and if she felt like playing a game, she would suggest Ticket to Ride. We have the Europe expansion as well and a couple of the maps, so it's quite enjoyable, Ticket to Ride. If you haven't played it, you're building train routes by collecting cards in sets and playing them to put trains on the board. Our family tends to play kind of gentle, but occasionally somebody will intentionally block somebody. In fact, there was a scandal in the family at one point when Grandma did that on purpose. She intentionally blocked somebody, and that wasn't something we'd really done much of. And there was a little bit of a kerfuffle. So that's Ticket to Ride, my number 48. 47 is a game I've only played once, and I'm always a little hesitant to put games on that I don't have that much depth of experience, but I really enjoyed it, and the more games you play, the more you can tell how much you're going to like a game even after one play, and that's Mythotopia. Mythotopia is a Martin Wallace game. It's part of his series of games in which you do a little bit of card collecting and use that to sort of do area control. A Few Acres of Snow is the first game that does this, apparently. He does it a bit in Study in Emerald, although that's got a lot of extra rules as well. Mythotopia and Handful of Stars is the most recent one that does this. So it's part of a series of games that he's done, and I really like the mechanisms in it. The rules are a little opaque. It's not an easy game to figure out how to play, but I really liked it when I played it. So Mythotopia, my number 47. Number 46 is another game I've only played once, mostly because of time. This is Fury of Dracula. I have the 3rd edition, which is supposed to be streamlined, and it still took us more than 3 hours to play. But I really like the production values. Fantasy Flight, I have the Fantasy Flight version. It was very good. Apparently the WizKids version is going to use the same art, and they'll even have painted models, which, ooh da lolly. But it's a neat game of hidden movement and strategy. As Dracula, you get to lay traps around Europe to mess with the hunters. As the hunters, you work together to try to find Dracula. It feels like Dracula is on the back foot a lot of the time, because once they get on your trail, it's really hard to elude them. But Dracula is also really strong, so when they actually confront you, you can beat the crap out of them or perhaps send them to the hospital. And that's pretty fun too. So Fury of Dracula, a really interesting one versus many hidden movement game. Definitely worth checking out if you get the chance. Number 45, I guess I do have some games on here I don't own. This would be the first game I don't own on my list, and that is Legendary Encounters, an alien deck building game. So Legendary is the Marvel system, which I'm not all that enamored of. It's the same as so many other deck building games in terms of how it works. The unique thing is that it's a co-op, and it has this board with these enemies on it. And so there's an element of fighting, working together to fight the enemies on the board and solving the problem of which enemies to fight first while you're working to beat the overall mission as well. Well, Legendary Alien takes this and bumps it up a level and makes a story, and it's a really compelling story. I haven't played the follow-up ones. I've only played the first Alien adventure in it, but it's really well crafted. It's really scary. I love the mechanism where if you get a facehugger on your character, then that facehugger goes into your deck, and you get to play again until you draw that again, and then it bursts out of your chest and you die. Or actually, no, you put a chest burster card in your deck, which is really funny to me. So that's Legendary Alien. Really worth a try if you get a chance. I like it a lot. In fact, I need to call my buddy Paul and see if we can play it again. That's number 45, Legendary Encounters, alien deck building game. Number 44 is another one of these games that we got fairly early in our game collecting, and that's Elder Sign. Now, the rest of my family has kind of fallen off their enjoyment of this because it's a lot of dice rolling, and in between turns, especially 3 or 4 player, it's kind of boring. It's really great as a 1 or 2 person game. I like to play it as a 1 person game, 2-handed. So I'll put 2 characters into play, and I'll play them both and just go back and forth. And it's a game, it's a swingy game. If you get ahead in Elder Sign, it can sometimes be a cakewalk. If you get behind, it's often a nightmare. But it's really fun. I've got several of the expansions. Most recently, I picked up Omens of Ice, but I haven't had a chance to break it out and try it yet. So that's the next thing. I think they've come up with a really good system to keep it alive, which is they release these update packs that have new cards in them, but like new city cards. So you can play Elder Sign in a new venue, but all of the bits, all the artifacts and items and dice and all of that stay from game to game. So it's almost like you're buying another scenario to play. And that works really well. I think there's Omens of the Deep, Omens of Ice, and the Pharaoh's Tomb or something. There's an Egyptian one that came out recently. So I'm behind a little bit, but really enjoy it. Number 44, Elder Sign. Number 43 is an early Kickstarter success, it's one of the first Kickstarters I backed, and I really like it. It's got art by Jackie Davis. It's designed by Ben Haskins. I think it's Ben Haskins of Floodgate Games, and this is Epic Resort. Epic Resort, the premise is heroes go adventuring. When they're done adventuring, they need a vacation, so they come and stay at this resort, and you try to build attractions for them. And there's this interesting thing where there's people, and then there's heroes at the resort, and then monsters show up, and so the heroes can either not fight the monsters and continue resting, or they can fight the monsters and then they lose their rest, which is part of the goal of the system, to get them rested. And if you don't get them rested, then you never score them. So it's a nice little worker placement game. It plays a little slow, but other than that, I really like it. That one didn't take off as much, but if you see it somewhere in a discount aisle, definitely pick it up. Epic Resort, my number 43. My number 42 is another game that I've only played once, and I like it in theory more than I enjoyed it in practice, but I still really liked it, and that was Fortune and Glory, the cliffhanger game. This is from Flying Frog Games. I like their stuff a lot. The aesthetic is really neat. The gameplay itself is a little on the Ameritrashy clunky side, but it's fun. The biggest problem with Fortune and Glory is the rulebook is very difficult to discern. There's lots of edge case rules that make for a lot of rulebook looking up. I imagine if you played this a few times within a couple of months and really got the rules down, it would be a smooth and enjoyable experience. And the way it wasn't quite for us. But I really liked it, and I think I'm itching to get it back to the table. It's very much just roll dice and do stuff. There's not a lot of strategy to it, but it's pretty fun. That's Fortune and Glory, the cliffhanger game. Then my number 41, the last game I'm going to cover today, is Back to the Future and Adventure Through Time. Now this is a card game designed by Matt Riddle and Ben Pinchback, which for some reason just got no love at all. It kind of disappeared real fast. It's from IDW, and I guess maybe part of why it disappeared is that it doesn't actually feel like Back to the Future at all. I mean, it's Back to the Future themed, but it doesn't need to be. Essentially what it feels like to me is that Riddle and Pinchback said, let's try to make a Carl Chuddick game. The way it works is you have these multi-use cards which have like 3 or 4 different bits of data on them, and you use the card for one of those things. You're flying a DeLorean back and forth. I got one of the early editions, so I got the DeLorean Matchbox car, which is fun. And you're flying the DeLorean back and forth. You're trying to solve these scenarios which get you points. And it's really tricksy. It makes your brain work really hard. It's relatively short to play, less than an hour. It's a little tricky to teach because there's a lot to keep track of. But that said, I've never taught it to someone who then didn't understand it. Mostly it was just a matter of like, don't forget you have to put a card under there, or don't forget this thing. But people pick up on it pretty quick, and it's a lot of fun. So if you get a chance to pick that up, I would recommend Back to the Future and Adventure Through Time as my number 41. So I'm out of time for today. That's the first 10, that's number 50 through 41 of my top 50 games. So reach out to me on Boardgame Geek, Guild 3269. Let me know what you think of the podcast so far. What would you like to see me do differently or better? What would you like to see me, I guess there's nothing you want to see me do worse. What things don't I do that you'd like me to add? And I'm curious, if you have your top 50 on Boardgame Geek, post a link to it. I'd like to see what kinds of games my listeners play. And if you have arguments about the games I've picked, I'm happy to hear them. Although, opinion is opinion, so you not liking Fortune and Glory doesn't change where it is on my list. But I'm still happy to hear your thoughts on the game. Well, thanks for listening. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.